A very brief intro to this video. I went to Athens, Georgia, got the opportunity to interview someone whose books I've read and have been a huge impact on horticulture for me. And I messed up the audio. And so the audio does improve throughout this video, but I want to let you know that it's completely 100% my fault, but I still want to put this video up because Dr. Dirr is just an incredible, it's just been an incredible influence on me in horticulture. I want to get back down there again and go through some more plants because he's an amazing resource for horticulture. So here goes. There is a second video coming, and the audio is perfect in that one. But I did the beginning of this one is a bit messed up. Sorry, guys. Thanks for watching. Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I am with the esteemed Dr. Michael Dirr, who was a professor at the University of Georgia. I'm going to let him introduce himself, but I'm super excited to be doing this video. For those of you who don't know, basically any nursery in America you walk into, if you see a bookshelf behind the person working in that nursery, the books are going to have this gentleman's name on them. So I'm excited to be here today. Can you tell us a little something about your history in horticulture?
Yeah, certainly. Welcome, Jim. It's 8 a.m. in the morning, and then we're in Bogart, Georgia, which is kind of the center of the universe, the gardening universe. And we're right next to Athens, Georgia, where many of you know Dr. Al Armory just spent his years, and back Al and I were great colleagues, and spent a terrific amount of time with both research and teaching activities, and playing tennis together. And he usually beat me, so we'll leave that there. And we're going to gardening. You know, I started my academic career at the University of Illinois, then came to the University of Georgia as director of the Botanic Garden, and decided fundraising wasn't the most exhilarating activity in the world, and moved me into the Department of Horticulture, where I completed my career. I have like 35 years of teaching research, and I've been retired since, officially retired since 2003. And I had an active plant breeding program at UGA, and we've introduced, well over, we're probably in 300 plants now. And we started a private business, which it'll be on another video Jim's going to do today, and talk a little bit about that. And I've always loved gardening. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. My mom was interested in plants. My dad was an active gardener. He was an accountant, but I think the gardening is what actually kept him sane. But between crunching numbers all day long and half the night too, and then the freedom to work in his garden and just obtain a bit of spirituality and freedom from the crunch of everyday life. And I feel the same way about it. Bonnie and I have been in this current garden 12 years. We have 3.5 acres. We bought some extra lots, and we've given a couple lots to my daughter, who we landscaped. She just built a house, and we landscaped it last June. We'll probably take you a walk through there and show you a few plants. But it's amazing what happens there, where there's actually one tree existing on this, our original house site, and it's a willow oak. I'm looking at it now in the background. Otherwise, everything was planted. So everything here is short of 12 years old, just 12 growing seasons old. And we love color. We love seasonality. So we have certainly the spring flowering trees and shrubs. We move into the hydrangeas in the summer, annuals, some perennials, and love fall color. So you see a lot of maples, a lot of Japanese maples, a lot of sugar maples, a lot of shrubs that you've probably never seen before. And with Jim's video, we'll take you walks to the garden and maybe point out a few things you might want to consider for your own garden. And behind me is, I've always sort of thought, it's nice to separate parts of the garden, so you sort of have this idea you're picking into a new room, kind of like View to Sackville West and Sir Harold Nicholson at Sissinghurst in England. And most of us have gotten the idea that we like garden rooms. Well, behind me on your left, as you look at the video, is a Parodia Persica called Vanessa, which is an upright sort of mini vase form. And on the right is a Kinanthus retusus called Tokyo Tar, which has the same kind of shape. Yeah. And I wanted to create kind of a cathedral ceiling look as you move into the back garden area. And we'll take a walk through there in a second. Also around the water spigot here, I've planted anything and everything. And there's a saying that a friend of mine had, plant thick, thin quick. So if you overplant, it's not a sin. You can always move plants. You can always reduce the volume with time. So that's a welcome to the garden, and we'll take a look around. We'll probably look at 5, 10 plants, maybe a few more, give you a couple ideas for your own garden, and welcome to Bogart, Georgia.
Okay, all right, one other thing before we get started. What did you guys do during the pandemic? I did not write a book, but Dr. Dirr did. He's written a beautiful hydrangea book. Some of them, I'm sure, were your introductions, and then it seems like it's almost an encyclopedia of current and some older varieties of hydrangeas.
Yeah, I had written a hydrangea book back in 2004 that was published by Timber Press, and consider doing another since there's been an avalanche of new cultivars, as many of you know, hydrangea macrophylla, hydrangea paniculata. It's tough to keep up. It's almost an everyday occurrence that some firm is introducing a new hydrangea. So hydrangeas are now pretty much second to roses in terms of flowering shrub sales. So that's one reason. It's an economic thing. The other thing is people know hydrangeas, and they certainly know roses. They're worldwide plants. Everywhere you go, you'll see hydrangeas. So it's not the hardest thing in the world to sell. In fact, it might be the easiest. It might be the easiest plant in the world to sell. So during the pandemic, I had started this before the pandemic in 2019, and then the pandemic hit, and it pretty much shut us down, as many of you know. And it was a chance to kind of reflect on 40 years of working with hydrangeas, breeding hydrangeas, which I did. I ended up with 580 photos. We did it in-house initially with, I had a local lady, Megan McCoy, who laid it out and helped me. She did all the design work, and she did a great job. And then obviously I did the writing, et cetera, et cetera. And we came up with a pretty good book, which we turned over to Stites Publishing, who did my manual that Jim was talking about before, the book that you find on every bookshelf. And they took it to market, because I decided I couldn't do a very good job marketing out of my basement. But there's 580 photos, 327 pages, and I think it's a good book. It's a lot of breeding, a lot of culture, things like propagation, how to germinate seed, how to breed. There's appendices. There's some of my favorite plants, kind of a appendix on Dirr's favorite hydrangeas that I, through the years, have proven, I won't say foolproof, but have been proven some of the easiest to grow. So it is available. Stites Publishing is in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, and you can go online and find it at Amazon, etc. So
awesome.
Okay, what you're looking at is a lindera. It's a spice bush. The scientific name is Lindera angustifolia. It's called the narrow-leaf spice bush. And it's one of my wife's and my wife Bonnie, who's an avid gardener and partner in this garden. And it's one of our favorite plants. It's really fascinating. The new foliage comes out in the spring, and it's a bright medium green with a silver underside. It almost reminds of Magnolia virginiana in terms of foliage character. In fact, in terms of foliage shape, the foliage turns, what you're looking at now, is anywhere from an orange to an orange-red. I have several of these in the garden. It's kind of a free-flowing shrub up to about 10 feet tall, easily pruned. In fact, what you're looking at was actually cut back last winter to the ground. This is new growth in 2020, 2021. And when it starts to turn, the color will hold for a month. And when it finally dissipates, or you lose the color, the leaves remain on as sort of an ashy brown right into spring until the new growth pushes off the leaves. And then you'll see the flowers. The flowers are small, yellow, they're not fragrant, they're not showy, but the plant itself can be easily maintained, pruned, and it's a great sort of billowy screening plant because there are leaves on it literally all year round until that push of leaves and the new leaves come out in the spring and sort of remove or push off the old leaves. So it's easily maintained, and no insects, no diseases. It is available. Very few people know it. Narrow-leaf narrow-leaf lindera or spice bush, and I think it could be one of the great plants. Zone 5 to Zone 8, where we sit. This garden is in Zone 8, and unbelievably beautiful metamorphosis or change in fall color from yellow to orange and to red. I've had it red. Year to year, it's different, but always excellent. And in fact, you look around the garden, and I'm looking around the garden now as I'm talking, there's nothing that quite rivals it, I think, for this sort of changing of the color guard. Magnolia that I introduced, or our program introduced from the University of Georgia, it's a Magnolia stellata. It's a star magnolia. It's called Centennial Blush. And my technician, Vicki Waters, and I were looking at our seedlings from Centennial, which had 33 petals or tepals. And we had a row of these seedlings from Centennial, and there was one that looked like almost like a pom-pom. and we start counting petals, or tepals are actually structures that, petals and sepals that look alike. They call them tepals or tepals, T-E-P-A-L-S. And we said, good grief, so we took about 5 flowers, we started peeling these things off, about average of 55 tepals per flower. And we had pink in bud, opens white, fragrant, more upright than typical Magnolia stellata, clean foliage, excellent foliage, and magnificent flowers, just literally shrouded in these pinkish white blooms in typically March, maybe creeping into April. Down here it would be later further north. But Magnolia stellata is hardy to Maine. You could go from University of Maine in Orono, Maine, and University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, and you can grow Magnolia stellata. So one of the great plants that is available. Bailey Nursery put it in their first editions brand, and I just love it. I got 2 or 3 around here by. I should say Bonnie and I love it, and anybody that's ever seen it in flower says the famous, where do I buy it, where do I get it? So you know it's sort of the instant love affair when you see this thing in flower. Right now you're just looking, as mentioned, fall color. I did limit it up and expose the kind of grayish branches, which I think are very, very attractive. So this is one to add to your vocabulary. You've got a Lindera now, and you've got a Magnolia Centennial Blush that you might want to consider for your garden. And both are smaller. I think this is going to mature about 15 feet tall, so it's not a large magnolia like a Hydrangea type, which I also have, or we also have in the garden. So it fits smaller gardens, and could be a good patio tree, that kind of thing. And you can see, again, we're on November 18th, and the foliage is still clean and just starting to turn that kind of a soft yellow-brown color. This is Cryptomeria japonica. It's called Chapel View. It was found by horticulturist Paul Jones at Serpidu Gardens up in Durham, North Carolina. It was a witch's broom on probably Yoshino, just straight Cryptomeria japonica. And I saw it in the garden many years ago when we lived in Chapel Hill, and I said, what is it? And the parent plant was about 7 feet tall, maybe 5 feet wide, and absolutely beautiful. And it was about somewhere between 12 and 14 years old, so it doesn't get too big like typical Cryptomeria. I have Yoshino, which is now, I'm looking at it in a distance, about 30 feet tall, and it's the same, essentially about the same age. So what's unique about this is the color is great, as you can see, probably see in the video. It's compact, and unlike Black Dragon and some of the others, which tend to set many male cones, and they carry this sort of brown cones right through winter into spring. This is clean all the way through. I've not seen any kind of foliar or needle blight, and it has stayed remarkably small. Obviously, I've got a lot of plants sandwiched in with these. I had 5 little plants in 1-gallon containers that I put in, and you can see I got Japanese maples mixed in with parodias, mixed in with red buds, with other things. But they're not totally shade tolerant. There's some shade tolerance in Cryptomeria, but I think this was available too. Again, Bailey Nursery picked this up and put it in the first editions brand, and very few people know about this. I don't think it's widely sold, but it is actually one of the best Cryptomerias, and there are numerous Cryptomeria cultivars that are available from United States nurseries. So remember the name Chapel View. The reason it's called Chapel View, it was apparently found in sight of the chapel at Duke University, on the Duke University campus. This is a dogwood that very few people know. It's Cornus, Florida, which everybody knows, but this is one called Appalachian Joy. Back in the, I guess, the Reagan years, when dogwood anthracnose reared its ugly head, Discula was a scientific name, a generic name of the disease. Everyone was concerned that we're going to lose all the Cornus, Florida in the eastern United States, southeastern United States. Well, that hasn't happened, and what did happen was there was a bunch of government money thrown at trying to breed and also select for resistance to the disease. And the University of Tennessee came up with the Appalachian series. And I have tested them at the University of Georgia, and what you're looking at right now is one called Appalachian Joy. And I've had it here, this has probably been here about 8, 9, 10 years, somewhere in that range. It is the cleanest dogwood. It is reliable every year. There's no anthracnose on the bracts or the flowers themselves or on the foliage. It turns an excellent anywhere from orange to red fall color. And there's Appalachian Joy, Appalachian Blush, and Appalachian Snow are 3 of the, what I think are the best of the Appalachian series. And if you're buying a dogwood, rather than buying a row-run seedling, which you never know what you're getting when you buy a row-run seedling, these are almost guaranteed. And we're sitting in zone 8. And unfortunately, they never were really promoted enough to get out into the general gardening public. But the Appalachian series is really outstanding for everyday garden use. And if you're looking for one dogwood that is probably going to thrive and survive, I would say the Appalachian series is worth considering. Right next to the dogwood, the Appalachian Joy I just mentioned, is a plant that I really knew nothing about, and probably until early 2000. It's a Parodia, P-A-R-R-O-T-I-A, subequalis, called the Chinese Parodia, and was introduced in the country in, I think, the 1990s. And I think the first time I saw it was at the Arnold Arboretum in Boston, and started reading and inquiring, and found out that, hey, this could be another good garden plant. And it's gradually been spread around at least the eastern, the eastern United States. And what I found remarkable about it, this has been in the ground again about the same length as the Appalachian Joy, maybe 8 years, somewhere in that range, 8, 9, 10 years. And it's now about 20, see, I'm 6 feet tall, probably about 20, 18, 20 feet tall. But it has the most beautiful fall color. It comes out maroon, it goes to an orangey red, and obviously, again, I mentioned the date before, we're in November 18th, and you're still looking at fall color. It's good for a month. And the thing about both the dogwood and the Parodia, since they're kind of cheek to jowl here in the garden, is that they're frost resistant. So you have a 28-degree frost or 25-degree frost, the foliage still maintains itself in good condition. It doesn't shrivel up and turn brown. And this is becoming available. I know one of the West Coast nurseries is starting to grow. Smith Nursery in Boyne, Oregon is going to release the Parodia subequalis into everyday commerce. And if you're looking for, again, a plant that is unique, it has a similar bark to Parodia Persica, and it exfoliates in grays and browns and greens. I think this is a good choice. And I love Parodia. If you look around the garden where the videographer Jim Putnam's standing, there's another Parodia called Henny's Dwarf, which isn't so dwarf. It's about 15 feet tall. I probably got about 10 Parodias scattered around the garden. And Parodia really doesn't have a household name recognition in gardening circles, but it's one of the most, from Chicago, Illinois to, again, Atlanta, Georgia. It performs magnificently and should be used much more than it is. When we walk around the garden, I'll show Jim a couple more that are grown from seed that have beautiful golden, yellow, orange fall color. So that is it. Parodia subequalis, Chinese Parodia. Keep your eye out for it. It's coming to your local garden center. Yeah, I like to mention sort of the garden making process. One thing my wife and I do, we try to build a bed, or what we call it, a border, and we'll bring in compost, and we'll rototill that into the ground, and then we start our planting process. And it's kind of higgledy-piggledy as far as what we put in. It's what we see, what we like, what we propagate, what we breed. And our garden is also a testing garden for our business and for the writing that I do. And the joy of all this is that every day you walk out in your garden and you can take a look at the plant performance and kind of put the sum of all the parts together, and at the end of a year, the end of a decade, as I said, we've been here 12 years, you have some idea about plant performance in Zone 8, which is hot, dry, can be cold, up and down. And if you can keep it looking good down here, you can probably keep it looking good most places, as long as it's hardy and adaptable. We're looking at one of the great natives. I've always loved this plant. When we were in Urbana, Illinois, I taught at the University of Illinois. I was one of the first to bring a Father Gilla in, and Father Gilla, nobody knew, and a lot of people still don't know, but it's a native. It's native to the southeast. There's Father Gilla gardinii, Father Gilla major, and then there's a hybrid called Father Gilla intermedia. This is probably an intermedia form. It's one from Isley Nursery they gave me a few years back, and it has the most consistent fall color. We introduced the University of Georgia program, my program, introduced the one called Mount Airy, which is in every nursery catalog, but there's more and more interest in Father Gilla. And there's nothing that has this sort of kaleidoscopic yellow, orange, red fall color. And again, it's late, and it adds great color to the garden. It's sitting right next to, if that's the right word, or planted right next to one of the loropetalums, the purple left loropetalums. And as I said, this is kind of a helter-skelter border. There's a dogwood right above that, which is Galaxy, not Galaxy, but probably Constellation. And then there's a Styrex, a Snowbell, then there's a Magnolia, which is called Sunspire, which is upright. Then there's the Quince, and there's an Aster at the base, and there's an Abelia. So there's a lantana in front of the Father Gilla. So the gist of all this is, you build a garden in a way for yourself, your family, your wife, and you don't really worry what the neighbors think or what the garden designer comes in and said, boy, there's no homogeneity to this. The hell with homogeneity. I like spontaneity and I like diversity, and you can do whatever you want in your own garden. There's a plant right over my head, which is right next to the loropetalum, and it's called Hydrangea. Hydrangea radiata or Zalocarpa. It's called jack tree, J-A-C-K. It has little white flowers. It's in the same family as Hydrangea, styrex, and beautiful heat-tolerant, shiny dark green foliage. And in the fall, it turns a beautiful butter yellow, which is starting to turn now. It's very late, and one of the, I would say, probably a few people that had this. We've grown it from seed. We've shared it with people. It'll never be mainstream, but if you want to fool your friends with a plant ID, and I do that frequently, Hydrangea radiata or Zalocarpa, I can't even tell them apart, is a certain one that'll have them scratching their head for a while. This is our little arboretum area, which is, you can never have enough land to plant a tree, enough space, I should say. But most of the trees in here I've grown from seed, or I've collected sign wood and grafted them or rooted them from cuttings. And I was extremely interested in sugar maple, which obviously is native, not in Georgia, but I see trees scattered around Georgia. And when I see them, I collect sign wood or budwood, we get it grafted. And you look at the one I found in our county, in Oconee County, I call it Oconee, O-C-O-N-E-E. And it's consistently beautiful for its golden, as you can see, golden yellow with a little bit of orange fall color. And sugar maple, I've read articles by people say sugar maple will grow in the south, it will grow in zone 8. We have sugar maple all over the Georgia campus, and my wife and I have been in Athens, Georgia, which is the home of the University of Georgia, for 41 years. And there's trees on campus that have been there for probably 40, 50, 60 years, so we're approaching 100 years old. So, you know, plants don't read books. And so many, I think particularly, I won't say bloggers, but people write stuff because it's like pass along information. And instead of actually experiencing it in the raw, in nature, wherever it happens to be, in the garden, in the landscape, in an arboretum, they just pass, it's like pass along mythology. But you can see that this could be a winner. There's one next to it over here which already dropped its leaves. And I just keep collecting, looking. And I'm looking if Jim can kind of rotate his camera a little bit. This is, we talked about dogwood autumn joy. I don't know if Jim can get in and get a shot of this, but a close-up. But this is typical seedling dogwood, Cornus Florida, and I can see the spots on the leaves. Most of the leaves are gone. It's not going to develop any significant fall color. And that's the issue with dogwood. I probably planted 20 Cornus Florida seedlings around the property, and you're looking at one. I think there's one left out of the whole bunch. It's canker, it's anthracnose, it's borers, and that's why I was so high on the autumn joy I mentioned before. And again, it's a native tree. It's just an improved native tree. And the question is, you spend your money on something that's grown from seed that may flower, may not flower, that may be disease resistant, may not be, or you buy a clonal tree, which is certainly derived from native material, that is inherently better. I mean, it's just like, do you buy a Pinto or you buy yourself a Mercedes or a Toyota or something? And in this case, I think you go with something that's going to perform over the long haul. And most of us only have room for a few trees, so why not give something that's going to give you longevity and good performance in the garden? This is a hybrid hydrangea, and it's planted on the west side of my daughter's house. And so there's some videos in front of it, and I just kind of filled in here. It's kind of a test area. But we've been looking for, and the industry has asked us, do you have a hydrangea macrophylla or a hydrangea that won't wilt when the temperature gets above 80 degrees? Well, we've been working with some of the unusual species of Hydrangea angustipetala, and we crossed it with one called Lady in Red. And this is a clone that we named Irish Lace. It's a white lace cap, and the sepals have a green spotting or sort of like lacy spottings throughout. So it became Irish Lace. And what's remarkable, number one, it's heat tolerant. It's been here all summer long. We've had our 90-degree days, and it does not wilt. The other thing, again, back to the date, which is, I repeated myself, November 18th, is that there's essentially no leaf spot. There's no cercospora, which looks like measles, little red spots throughout the foliage, and there's no mildew. And we have used this in breeding. We have crossed this with Summer Crush, we've crossed it with Bloomstruck, and we have a whole population of seedlings now at our company, which you may see on an accompanying video. We're going to take a look at that later on today. And we're looking for a mophead form that reblooms, that has the same traits, the same foliar traits. And the other thing about this, it's extremely hardy. This thing does not die back to the ground like many of the macrophyllus tend to do in this part of the world. So I'm excited. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants in here, and it's amazing how good they look. When you've been breeding hydrangeas for 40 some years, and all you've seen largely is a disaster in terms of foliage, susceptibility to, as I mentioned, cercospora and mildew, and then you come up with something like this almost out of the blue. It's almost like happenstance that it happened. We didn't know we were going to end up with this, but the reason we did, and this goes back a little bit to plant collection. Dan Hinckley collected the Hydrangea angustipetala. I think it was I'm trying to remember, it was Korea or China, but it turned out to be a hardy clone. And Dan obviously had Heronswood Nursery. He shared plants. We bought plants from him. And we said, hey, let's try this in breeding. So with the controlled cross I mentioned, Lady in Red, which is extremely hardy, times angustipetala, gave us Irish Lace. And is this good enough by itself? It's actually quite pretty, but it doesn't have that sort of pop that you need for a garden center. And so we're working for the pop. And whether we get there or not, I don't know, but it's a journey and a worthwhile traveling, worthwhile taking. And if you see this on the market, we've shared this with people. It's not patented, it's not, there's no protection, and it hopefully will hit the market. Some enterprising nursery will say, hey, this is a good garden plant. And I would say zone 5, certainly to zone 8, and you'll never see another hydrangea that has macrophyllal blood in it that looks this clean at this time of year. This is Parodia Persica. These are seedlings that I grew, and these are from a cultivar named Jennifer Teets, which was introduced by Alex Nemir, named after his wife. Alex is a professor at Virginia Tech. And it's an upright form. We grew a population of seedlings, kind of looking for variation. Thought we might get something back that's more fastigiate, tighter, columnar, and we did. And I put about 5 or 6 of them together here, but as kind of a screen. And they're the most beautiful trees. The thing about Parodia, it leaves out early. It'll be in leaf. It flowers in March. Leaves will start popping late March, April. And it holds its leaves into December, and we're 14 days away from the beginning of December. So a wonderful plant, and again, it has that bark like I mentioned before on Parodia subsequalis, the exfoliating gray, green, white, kind of creamy colored bark. So very excited. I've never pruned these, never touched them. Put them in the ground and let them roam, let them do their thing, and they've done well. And when the sun fully lights on these, you're driving in our subdivision where we live, you can see that they just glow. They're absolutely beautiful. So Parodia Persica, and these are simply seedlings. So anybody that's listening to the video and looking for a good garden plant that's almost foolproof, I mean, it's almost unkillable, Parodia is certainly a good and worthy choice. This is a camellia I grew from seed. As you've probably got the idea, I love growing things from seed because you never know what you're going to end up with. It's kind of like you're living in the future, and you wait for that seedling to flower, do its thing, and you go, wow, I never thought this would happen. Well, this is the case. I never thought this would happen. This came from, in the 80s in Athens, we had, in a lot of places in the southeast, we were below 0. We were -2, -3, -5, -9 in parts of Atlanta, 82, 83, 45. And in our botanical garden at the University of Georgia, all the camellias, Japonicas and Sasankos, were literally killed back or killed to the ground and killed outright. And there was one that was never touched. It was called Maidens Blush. Maidens Blush is a pink. And my wife and I were walking the botanical garden, and I'm looking, and I say, there's seed on that camellia. And so I pick a handful of seed or a pocket full of seed and come home, sow it. And camellias are kind of interesting. You soak the seed and you sow it immediately, and it germinates. Well, this is about 4 years or 5 years down the road. I had a bunch of seedlings. All of them were pink. Some of them had small flowers, some a little bigger. Nothing outstanding except for this one that you're looking at. Turned out to be white, loaded with flower buds. It's been flying for about a month, and I'm watching the bees. There's an avalanche or a swarm of bees that are just extracting pollen right now. And I've taken cuttings, and I think we might actually introduce this. It's the most beautiful single white I think I've seen, and it's upright. It's almost columnar. So I can see this as kind of, Jim's nodding his head as he's looking at the plant. You can almost see this as kind of a hedging plant without a lot of pruning. Thereby you don't cut off all the flower buds. And unless I'm projecting too far out, if it's as hardy as Maidens Blush, which was negative numbers, then this could be a special plant, especially, and it could go up to zone 6 certainly. And obviously, again, you're looking at zone 8 performance here. But my wife and I walk about this about every day. We walk around the garden and we go, boy, that is a beauty. And hopefully it'll be in commerce in a few days, or a few days, I should say, a few years down the road. We're taking our first cuttings this year. So Camellia sasanqua, Maidens Blush seedling, and pretty remarkable what nature gives you if you give her a chance. This is, I mentioned early on, I think that my wife and I both love the seasonality of plants, and have a lot of maples, a lot of Japanese maples, a lot of seedlings. I mean, it's easy to grow Japanese maple from seeds, sow it and just wait for a couple of years, they pop up. But there are some good cultivars, especially for the South. I mean, there's so many selections of Japanese maple that it's overwhelming. And what we found are, if you're looking for a green leaf, dissected, upright tree form, Seryu, which is a tough one to spell, it's S-E-I-R-Y-U. Seryu is one of the best, and you're looking at Seryu right now. It has this sort of reddish maroon fall color, bright green summer foliage, just clean all year round, and I think one of the best small Japanese maple tree types for certainly southeast or for actually anywhere. And we also use a lot of sangukaku, coral bark. We use a lot of viridis. We use, which is a dissected kind of a semi-weeping form. We use tamukiyama, which is one of the better purple leaf dissected types. And you don't need many more than that. I've got Crimson Queen, and we've got Orangeola, and we got others around, Hefner's Red, and on and on. But the average gardener doesn't need 100 different Japanese maples. I think a few dotted around. Again, space is always an issue, and you have a small tree that'll fit just about in anywhere. You can put it in a container if you so choose. So this is certainly one of the very best. There's one just down the walkway here called Omuriyama, which has turned beautiful orange red, and I could go on with Japanese maples, but I think I'll just quit and give you those 4 or 5 and let you kind of think about adding one to your garden, and almost guaranteed foolproof performance. This is kind of a natural area, and I had one little woodsy spot left with a lot of trees, and I thinned it once, and I thinned it again, and I tried to cut down the shade load, because if you take a look around, as Jim does an overview, you'll see there's still a great number of trees. There's white oak in here, there's red oak in here, there's willow oak in here, there's this in here, there's Puna serrata, black cherry. But I underplanted when I finally got it cleaned out. I started to underplant. And originally it was going to be a hydrangea garden. It didn't work out too well. I hauled in soil. I got oak leaves in here, I got arborescens, which are okay, but there really is not much water. I got a few spray stake irrigation systems set up, but I don't take great care of them. But again, we planted beech tree, and I spotted around this Parodia I mentioned before. This is the one you're looking at. Just plant it, let it go. This is Parodia subequalis, the Chinese Parodia again, but the fall color on this is just absolutely magnificent. I love the reds, I love the oranges. You'll see a lot of Japanese maples in here as again, the video is panned around. And then I'm a great fan of American beech. American beech runs from literally Florida to Maine into Canada. And it's actually native in every state east of the Mississippi and a few states west of the Mississippi. I'm not sure what Oklahoma and a few states like that. And it's certainly one of our great and noble native trees. And unfortunately, it's pretty much all seedling produced. I shouldn't say unfortunately. So there's not a lot of uniformity. You'll see a million October glory red maples because people know they're going to get a red fall color, and it's got a certain sort of oval rounded growth habit to it. Try to find a uniform American beech, but it's I think the word, and Jim used it before, is tardily deciduous. The leaves actually will often hold on in the winter, at least in the juvenile portion. Fall colors are beautiful, bronzy, golden brown, and these are all seedlings that I've planted in here, and someday hopefully they will take over. It's one of the, obviously like the oaks, it's one of the climax species and the endpoint of succession, which means it will hopefully keep reproducing itself. in situ, in place. And I've got other ones around too as we walk around this little area of the garden. But I love the color. I just kind of walk up here with my cup of coffee in the evening after dinner, and I go, wow, wow, wow. And sometimes you don't have to do a lot of work to get some pretty special results. It's just plant it, make sure you get it established, and let the genetics do their thing. But the issue is that hydrangeas make money and trees are a slow go. So I got a buddy who owns Select Trees in Mike Glenn, and he says, I sell one oak tree and you sell 100 hydrangeas. I get $2 royalty on my oak tree. You get $1 on your 100 per plant on your 100. So it's some of it's economic too. But when I'm here, I grew up in the Midwest. I went to school in New England, Massachusetts, and always appreciated fall color, and tried to bring a measure of that to the garden. And you can see it when you walk through here. But most people, as you said, aren't even looking at the garden at this time of year. They're thinking Thanksgiving, they're thinking Christmas, and the kids are in school, and it's a different ballgame. But I think this is one of the most beautiful times of year. I work for Roger Milliken, who owns Milliken Corporation, or major stockholder or owner in Milliken Corporation in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And you may not know it, but Millikens in your everyday life. Your kids' crayon pigments, those are from Milliken. Your airbags, those are from Milliken. Your Tupperware that you can see through to see if your bologna's blue or gray or green, that's from Milliken. On and on and on. It's amazing what the company does. They have over 2,000 patents, probably more like over 3,000 now. But Mr. Milliken just loved fall color. And he told me once, I worked with him for 20 years, he died at age 95. He said, Mike, I think the most beautiful thing about our grounds, we have 600 acres over in Spartanburg that we planted, plus many other places within the confines of Spartanburg and actually in South Carolina, was that the fall color, and we flew, he's got a helicopter, we flew to the place in the fall, and you look down and you see all these spots of orange and red and green and on and on and on. It's the most exciting time of the year. And he loved trees, and we actually he started a Noble Tree Foundation to support tree planting in the upstate of South Carolina. And it's transformed Greenville, South Carolina, Spartanburg, South Carolina. And if you looked at the airport, the drive into the airport is rich with conifers. And there's one man, I'm always amazed what committees can't do and what one man with a vision can do. And Roger Milliken, my wife and I talk about him frequently, and just amazed that a person running a large mega corporation could be so focused on trees. And he never forgot anything. So he'd say, Mike, that's that tree, that's on and on and on. And I miss him. He was one of there'll never be another one like him, I think is a good way to put it. But he made horticulture better, certainly in the southeast and particularly in the upstate of South Carolina. This is one of the great maples that native to China that unfortunately nobody really knows. It's called Acer triflorum, 3-flower maple. The flowers come out in clusters of 3, hence the name 3-flower. But it's magnificent for both bark and fall color. This is a selection called Artist Etching. And if you can see the bark, or if Jim can get it closer to the bark, you'll see it comes off in these paper sheaves, almost like a paper bark maple or like a river birch. It's absolutely adaptable from Minnesota, from the Twin Cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, St. Paul, to Atlanta, Georgia. I've got 3 of them, or I should say Bunny and I have 3 of them in the garden, and they never fail. This is the best fall color I've seen on this one. This is typically yellow. We got a little bit of burnt orange and red in this one, and I just love this tree. If you're looking for a small tree, 20, 30 feet, with good fall color, beautiful bark in the wintertime when the tree's deciduous, this is certainly worth considering. Acer triflorum, 3-flower maple, and it's growing well. I got a little twig in years ago from Song Sparrow Nursery, which is now out of business, and one of Roy Clem's introductions. And I'm looking at the bark, and she's just popping off on a young tree. It's just exfoliating, popping off in these papery sheaths. So wonderful garden plant, especially for small properties, and wide adaptability. Tree on the mini journey through the garden today, and you're welcome back anytime. In fact, anybody that's in the neighborhood is welcome to walk through the garden. This is a hybrid maple that was bred by Keith Warren. Keith is a co-author of the tree book with me. And Keith worked for 40 years for J. Frank Smith Nursery in Boyne, Oregon, was a breeder, introduced numerous wonderful trees. And Keith has great patience and a great eye, and he said, we're not after just another tree introduction, we're after a better tree introduction. These are hybrids between Acer truncatum, Acer platanoides. They're largely sterile. This one's called Crimson Sunset. It has a red summer foliage, and you can see it now. It goes to kind of a yellow, orange, red fall color. Keith also introduced one called Ruby Sunset, which has excellent fall color, and one called Urban Sunset, which has excellent red fall color. Both of those are orange red, and I have both of those in the garden also. So the wonders of nature. Norway maple is actually banned in some of the states, the New England states, because of weediness or invasiveness. And this is I don't even remember seeing seeds on this tree. I've had it for probably about 6 years of the garden, 7 years of the garden. So that's kind of as I said, a quick trip through the Dirr garden. I appreciate you putting up with me. As I said, there's a lot of plants. There's actually probably when you start counting them up, there's 1,000 different plants in here, and I keep adding and I keep subtracting. I don't think a garden is something that just is sort of a little window in time. It's wide open. It changes with the seasons. We add new plants, subtract plants. We see something we want to try, we don't know much about, it ends up in the garden. And certainly if any of you ever read the manual or any of the Dirr books, you know that the evaluations are based on, for the most part, actually living with the plant, whether it's in an arboretum, somebody else's garden, or in our garden. We speak from, I think, a standpoint of veracity, and it isn't just some sort of hyper promotion, which is often the case in many new introductions. And I would encourage you to be leery of all the new plants that come out, because everything is the greatest when in fact very few are great. And you can't grow every hydrangea, every paniculata. Jim and I were talking about hydrangea paniculata and how many new selections have been introduced. What do you grow? We got little ones, we got big ones, we got in-betweeners, we got red flowered or sepal forms, and nobody has really ferreted out, I think, what is the best across the country. So it's live and learn, it's read, kind of don't believe everything that's on the internet. And I guess the best, I got this sort of saying I use, that observation, whether it makes any sense or not, I'm not sure, but observation is a great teacher. You can look at this tree and say, gee, it's pretty nice, because is it nice in the summertime? Is it nice in the spring? Is it nice in winter? Does it have good form, good structure? Is it prone to storm damage? Are there insects and diseases? So you got a whole litany of questions you ask, and then when you kind of answer most of those questions, you can honestly say, hey, this is a good plant. So enjoy the video, keep gardening, and have a good day.